is bringing forth. Now, in this thing is these passions that wage war. So let us begin to unfold this chapter here. Verse 1. James does this. I think it is for emphasis, and so I will emphasize it. If I was writing, I would say, what causes quarrels and fights? That's the way I would word it. What causes quarrels and fights? That would be grammatically correct. But James will do what causes quarrels and what causes fights. He'll do it twice to emphasize it and to bring it out. You remember James 1:17, I would say every good and perfect gift. James doesn't do that. Every good and every perfect gift. He'll use that double emphasis to bring it out. So, what is the cause of these things? These quarrels, what is the cause of these fights? Is it not your passions that are at war within you? A few things here. Pleasures, wars, and fights. Verse 1. The word for war, a state of hostility, antagonism, or strife, conflict within that has demonstrated itself externally amongst a group of people. A word battle within a community. In other words, I hope it hasn't come to the sense of a real sword, a real gun, or a baseball bat that we're slinging at each other within the local church. Certainly don't want that. But it seems that James is saying that hasn't happened yet. What has happened is there's a war within the local church, and it's a war of words that is being thrown throughout the church. Very strong weapons that have caused great amount of consequences upon those who have been hit with these words. By the way, this word for war is the same word that is used for a war in a physical combat. So it's a very lively word. You would use this same word to say that America went to war with Afghanistan. You'd use that same word. And he's saying that type of war is going on in the local church with words. Okay, so it's a real live, potentially destroying war or quarrel that is going on. These fights, there's a lot of overlap between the quarrels and the fights. The fights are battles fought without actual weapons, disputes, serious conflict, either physical or non-physical, but clearly intensive and bitter, to clash severely, to struggle, to fight. You ever been involved in a local church in which you've taken up that attitude with another person within the local church? A sense of severe clashing. We go together like oil and water. There's a sense of bitterness and a tension there that is very lively, and one little thing will set both parties off, and they'll go at each other, even at the expense of the entirety of the body. These things go on in a local church. By the way, as a side note, sometimes we wonder how this can happen. I just want you to be reminded, God's not surprised by all of this. God knows these things have been going on since the New Testament times. When you have people who are sinful, who gather together to try to do something in unity together, we have all hearts that we bring to the table, these type of things happen. What we need to do is just at least recognize the truth of it, deal with the cause of it, in order that we can minimize the damage. Remember, Paul says a few things like this. Paul says about these fights and quarrels, these verbal struggles within the local church. Paul says, have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies that breed quarrels. It's a good rule of thumb. Just, as they say in New York, forget about it. Just quit. Don't get tied up in some endless verbal debate within the local church. I could give you multiple reasons, but if nothing else, it diminishes or takes away from the glory of God and the beauty of His church. Because of that alone, I quit, you win. I'm not fighting over this meaningless genealogy here or getting tied up in some kind of ignorant controversy. You can have it. I'm not going to do it. Let your words be few. Ecclesiastes 5. Or he says in Titus, avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law. Why? They are unprofitable and they are worthless, have no value. And yet you'll get people in the local church jockeying over a matter and trying to win, and at the end, when one party wins, they don't even know what to get. Well, I showed him. Showed him what? Showed him you were ignorant. Because you destroyed your brother to elevate yourself, and now you're on top of the mountain by yourself. Great. Who wants to be alone in this deal? So avoid this kind of nonsense. This is what's going on in this local church. And James is telling us that the reason is passions or pleasures. That's the word here, at least in my translation, is passions. You'll see a footnote there that says pleasures. Okay? Experiencing pleasure for any reason, delight, enjoyment, or pleasantness. So what is generating here in this local church is the flesh or the heart finds pleasure in something, and it wants it so bad that it'll do anything to get it. We're going to continue working this out, but work with me. They're wanting these pleasures. Here's a couple of examples from Peter. They count it pleasure to revel in the daytime. They are blots and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions while they feast with you. Feast within the church, deceptions and revelings, and they're counting it pleasure to stir this up within the local church. Say, people do that? Yes. People love drama. They love to stir things up. They love to keep everybody on their toes. Somehow they get pleasure out of this. I know this sounds bad, but simply out of the attention that it generates. If I do this and stir this, then people's attention is stirred towards me, and somehow they're gratified by that. It's a pleasure. Titus 3:3. We ourselves were once foolish. We were disobedient. We were led astray, and we were slaves. Slaves to various passions and pleasures. Now, all of our pleasures can be different within a local church or however else we want to work that out. But the thing that is being signified here is that the core reason of the fighting is that the people within the local body have certain things that please them, and they're going for them at the expense of others in order that they can obtain what it is that is their pleasure. Now, it says that these pleasures or passions are at war within you. An internal battle in which we have spirit and flesh, a turmoil inside of our conscience and our flesh, a turmoil in which there's two things warring within us trying to obtain something. One part of us wants it, and one part of us is saying you don't need it. And there's this conflict or turmoil in there that happens to just come out within the local church. This word, to make war, to engage in a conflict, wage battle. There's been a fight that has taken up within you. 1 Peter 2:11. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh which, what? Wage war against you, against your own soul. He says, 1 Peter 2:11, that these things are to be abstained from, that these passions generated by the internal flesh, they are waging war against your very soul. There's that internal battle. Now, if we don't properly deal with this thing internally, it comes out externally, and many people get hurt within the local church. Pastors get hurt. Deacons get hurt. Sunday school teachers get hurt. Members of the church get hurt. Visitors get hurt. A community gets hurt. All of these things just continue to flow out into a ripple effect, having negative effects everywhere it goes, and it was generated by a conflict that started in your own heart. This is what James is telling us. Now, verse 2. Passions that do not produce our pleasures. He says in verse 2, you desire or you lust. This is what the driving motive is. And so you have this great desire. It is the word epithumeo, which can be negatively or positively, but here it is used in the negative sense. Epithumeo is to have a strong desire to do or secure something. Now listen to the strength of this. A strong desire to obtain or to receive something. So strong is this desire that wages war in my heart and in your heart. It's this strong that if it does not get what it wants, it will murder. No, I would never kill anybody at church. I wouldn't shoot anybody. No. Well, let's go back to Genesis and see how far we've progressed. If I can't have it my way, I'll kill my own brother. If I can't have it my way, I'll sell out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver and make sure He gets crucified. If I can't get my way, I'll make sure somebody has to pay. If I can't get it the way I want it, I'm going to make sure somebody else gets sacrificed. I'm going to make sure somebody else knows how much that I really hate them. And if you hate your brother in your heart, you've already committed murder in your heart. This is what he's saying. This is a dangerous area that our heart, some of you don't believe this, but our heart has the potential for murder. Well, no, now I wasn't raised on that side of the tracks, and I didn't come from that type of a family. The heart has the potential for this kind of